Hello and welcome. I'm Bill Holkham, and in today's beginner's watercolor tutorial, I'll guide you step by step through painting a simple beach scene, perfect for artists just getting started. We'll cover everything from mixing the right colors to choosing the best brushes for soft skies, sand, and gentle waves. So grab your brushes and let's paint watercolors. I am mixing some Windsor blue in a couple of the palettes there, and to one of them I'd add some alizarin crimson. Then using my number 12 brush, I've got some clear water in the sky area here and there broken, and then come in with the weak Windsor blue mixture, and I'm avoiding those areas that I've left without water in the sky because I'm going to fuse it in on the edges so we get nice white fluffy clouds. And I'm bringing that cloud down to the pencil line for the horizon level. And at this stage, I would say a good tip is to always have some tissue to handy, clean tissue, where you can dry off the brush if it's got too much pigment. And you can dry off and maybe add some water to the brush to allow you to do some fusing, especially useful when doing clouds. At that horizon level, it is darker, so I've added that darker mixture in that second palette there. And you see me again drying off the brush here and there, and then just fusing in the cloud to the area that I've left white. Once again, using the white of the paper for our whites in the English style of transparent watercolor, as opposed to using body color. If I used body color in that cloud, it would jump out at you. It would look foreign, not natural. So, great use of flat brushes now. Another tip for beginners is use flat brushes when painting water, such as lakes, ocean, etc., even rivers for rippling water. And once again, I'm using the white of the paper. You can see I'm doing horizontal lines, and with my smaller flat brush, I am just showing some of the waves cresting. That will be darkened even more later. And remember, as another tip, that when you do your paintings of water, such as the ocean, that you do have cloud shadows here and there on the water. That makes it much more realistic if you drop in those darks here and there. And as the waves crest and reach the shoreline, where the beach is, then you can do those distinctive lines for waves crashing. Then we're mixing some yellow ochre. Yellow ochre, I would definitely give as a tip for beginners for doing sand. It's a nice media between yellow, Windsor yellow, and other yellows, etc. It has a little bit more depth, and it's not so bright, and I think it works well for sand. So that's another tip I would give you for beginners. Then whilst that's wet, lots of wet and wet going on here. I've dipped into the darker mixture that you can see, all pre-prepared, and I'm dropping in shadows. Another tip for beginners, as much as possible, mix up your paints well in advance. You work out what you're wanting to achieve, the different colors that you think you'll use, and if you can mix up quantities of them in a palette with large wells, as you can see on the right-hand side of the picture, then this means you can keep painting whilst the paper is wet for your wet and wets. If you had to constantly mix up colors whilst painting, then it dries on you and then you get problems, hard edges and everything. Another good tip for beginners using nice clean tissue and a flat brush is put water on that brush, clear water, and then at that horizon level, you can lay down some of the clear water, almost digging slightly into the paper, and then just gently lift with that nice tissue. Now, I'm strengthening up some of those crashing waves, especially at the shoreline area, just here and there, and showing nice contrast. And you can see the white of the paper showing through again. This is very easy, nice practice painting for beginners. Now, of course, if you're more advanced, you might want to tackle this on a larger scale, a piece of paper much larger than this. Because it's a tiny piece at the moment, 7 inches by 5. You may wish to go to 15 by 11, something like that. Now we're mixing up some Windsor yellow at the top with a dash of Windsor blue in each, one quite weak and one stronger. Later on, we'll mix up some even stronger mixture. We'll come on to that. And here I'm just testing. Another tip for beginners, have a test piece of paper to hand at all times so that you can see the strength of the colors that you've mixed up. Also, you may wish to take some of the pigment off your brush, and you can achieve it that way as well as using a tissue. Then for these sand dunes, we're laying on some of the lighter green mixture first of all. This is very much an underpainting situation. And then whilst it's wet, we're just dabbing in here and there a little bit of the darker mixture. Still an underpainting. That's another tip for beginners. Not enough attention is given to the need for underpaintings in transparent watercolor. Remembering you're working from light to dark, and this helps to give a harmonious effect to the painting, brings things together, and helps you achieve the final result in terms of the different shades that you're aiming for, different intensity of colors and transitions from light to dark, etc. So hues are the colors and tone is the variation in terms of lighter and darker. Then along this little path area leading down into the beach between the dunes, we've got little indentations in the sand, little bits of dark here and there where people traverse that area. And I'm dropping in some shadows where the dunes are, and they can be fused in with some water added to the brush here and there as I'm doing. As broken up as possible to make it realistic. There is some degree of uniformity to this painting, but as much as possible, I try to avoid that. But we didn't want to make it too complicated for you at this stage as beginners. So now I'm mixing up a stronger version of the green because we're going to do the grasses for the sand dunes. I'm also mixing up a brown color. You could use a brown straight from the tube, but I like to use the 3 colors mainly that I'm working with to achieve a harmonious effect for the end result for the watercolor painting. So that brown mixture, as you can see, is some alizarin crimson, Windsor blue, Windsor yellow. And we're using this for these various fence posts and rails, etc. You could have added an extra rail to make it 4 rails if you wanted. I'd left the posts sticking out quite a bit. You could do that differently if you wish. Then I've gone to a very small brush. You could use a 6 or you could go right down to a 2 and get nice thin strands of grasses. And as I said, I know I'm making this one quite uniform at the moment because it is aimed at beginners. We didn't want to have it too complex. Now, as you progress, you could, of course, make it much more varied than I have in this demonstration. Then once again, I'm fusing in with that clear water. And at this stage, I would mention that for these tutorials, I do keep the paper in one place for ease of the video, so you can see what's going on. But at home, apart from big wetting wet washes like the sky and certain water areas, you can, of course, choose to move your paper around. You don't have to have it stuck down. This is Archie's 300-pound rough, so it doesn't need to be taped down. That tape at the bottom is merely to keep it in one position, so it's not moving all over the place during the videoing. Now, if you was using 140-pound rough arches, which I do occasionally for these tutorials, then I would tape it down all the way around. Strong mixture now going on for these strands of grasses from the dunes. We're getting well through the tutorial now. I know this is a nice one to practice with, quick and easy beach scene for beginners. Nice and simple. So I would give this a go if I was you. It helps your practice in transparent watercolor, which you can then strengthen your ability to understand and control the techniques, which you can then apply to your larger masterpieces. So I've included a few little seagulls just for interest, no great detail for them. I like to use an odd number, whether it's 3, 5, or 7. We got 5 today. And some are more defined, some less defined, etc., smaller, larger. And here we have it, the finished tutorial. Simple beach scene for beginners. I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this tutorial, give my other beginner videos a try by clicking this thumbnail.